Welcome to a special edition of The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. Here on The Point of View, we pick the right issues, we get the right guests. We usually ask them relevant questions on things that matter to you. And it's a Rawlings tribute special 2.5 months ago, precisely November 12th. Founder of the NDC and Ghana's longest serving head of state died. And of course, there was an election, so we couldn't get the chance to reflect upon his life. Tonight, I have a big show with different parts for you, and it's going to be exciting, and it's live. So get in touch with your comments and your tributes, your commiserations or your commentaries on former President Flight of Nigeria Rawlings on the WhatsApp number on the screen. But before we get into that, I'll start with a public service announcement. Stay with us.
You've done the hard work, the analysis, the selection. It's all going according to plan. Until City miss a sitter, and you miss your multi-bet by one. Miss your multi-bet by one, and we will return up to 20 times your stake. We've got your back, even when City don't.
This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the Gaming Commission of Ghana. Bet responsibly, not for persons below 18 years.
Welcome back to The Point of View. So tonight is a Rawlings special. We have very interesting voices you will hear. We have Dr. Christina Mwakuniyama. She's joining us live via Zoom. We have Fritz Bafo. We spoke to him earlier in the day. You would hear from Zaneto Rawlings. You would hear from Archbishop Gabriel Charles Palmer-Bako, all on the same show. We even have a special video tribute that a team called Eagles Online put together with some nice photos and a song about Rawlings. But viewers, before we talk about that, Ghana has 3,613 active cases of COVID-19. And in fact, the numbers are really scary. We are in the middle of a second wave, 62,135 confirmed cases, 646 of which are new. 372 people have died. Of course, happily, 58,150 have recovered, but COVID is still with us. I have a press statement from the Ghana Medical Association dated today, January 25. I just wanted to read just the 9 paragraphs so we are all serious and understand what's going on. This statement is signed by Dr. Frank Ankobia, who's the president of the association, and the Dr. Justice Youngson, general secretary. Now it reads, press statement, the Ghana Medical Association, taking into consideration the recent trend of new cases of COVID-19 in the country, on the average 600 cases a day, wishes to state as follows. 1, the COVID-19 pandemic is still a major health threat to all persons living in the country. 2, the pandemic has a potential of further weakening our already fragile health systems. 3, the non-adherence to the COVID-19 preventive measures has the potential to further escalate the spread of the disease. Now, point 4 is serious. They are saying government should, as a matter of urgency, restrict social activities such as parties, church services, funerals, clubs, and other social gatherings of such nature. The market should be regulated and as much as possible restricted. This is like April, May 2020. They're also saying government should restrict the number of people attending the state funeral for the late His Excellency Flight of Nigeria John Rawlings, and rather encourage people to follow proceedings on television, like you are doing, and other social media platforms. 6, government should ensure prompt, continuous supply and adequate distribution of PPEs to all health workers in the various health institutions. And 7, suppliers and vendors of various types of PPEs, especially the face masks, should not take advantage of the new surge of COVID-19 cases and increase demand for their products by scaling up prices. This is the in the long run will not inure to the benefit of the country in our quest to defeat the virus. Paragraph 8. Ghanaians are entreated to get tested if they have flu-like symptoms and as much as possible desist from self-medication. 9. Once again, each and everyone should take their personal safety into their own hands by adhering strictly to all COVID-19 safety protocols. Signed, GMA President and General Secretary. Now, viewers, what is important is that today during the Information Ministry press briefing, Minister Designate Kojo Nkrumah did not rule out the possibility of another lockdown. So we're urging Ghanaians to adhere to these restrictions and let's be each other's keeper. Thank you for your attention. Now, let me first start with a short video tribute that a group calls Eagles Online, Eagles Empowerment Advisory Group for Leadership Excellence. It's really a song they composed for former President Rawlings with some photos of his journey as a revolutionary president, former president, and a statesman. Enjoy.
Hungry, screaming Ghanaian who wants to realize his creative potential, who wants to contribute.
If we can learn to be bold enough to restore the value of truth in our society, then we will have justice. Without truth, we cannot get
Let me assure you that Africa can work. It is up to the rest of the world to look beyond the prejudiced and sensational images and recognize Africa as the continent of the future.
So that was Dr. Krantin Pippin and his team, the Eagles team, putting together that video tribute to Chairman Rawlings. Now, I'm going to talk to a different set of people tonight. I'll start with Dr. Christina Mwaku-Nyama, who's worked with the NDC. She was Minister for Environment, Science and Technology. This was between 93 and 96. She was Minister for Education between 97 and 98, and also Minister for Lands and Forestry 98 to 2001. So the Fourth Republic, the first 2 terms of Rawlings, she was a cabinet minister. She also was an advisor to President Mills and President Mahama. So she's paid her dues. Also chairman of GIMPA Governing Council. Doc, great to have you. Thank you for taking time to talk to us. Good evening.
Good evening, Ben.
I hope you are doing well.
Fine, thank you.
Now, for those of us who didn't work with Chairman Rawlings, what is the immediate sort of reflection you've had? I'm sure you did over a decade with him working in various capacities. What's your immediate reflection on his life and legacy?
Remembering when I first met him, generally, Chairman Rawlings, as you would see him, or as people will talk about him, you probably imagined a very stern personality. But when I was invited to join his team, and he was my boss from 1993, as you just said, as Minister for Environment to begin with, and then a year later, another ministry was added to it. It was combined, and then it became Environment, Science and Technology. I found him to be a person who respected age. Because I was older than him, I really can say that he never, ever called me by my first name.
Wow.
If he wanted to joke, he would call me Reverend, because I had said a few things about Christ, Jesus Christ to him. So he would jokingly call me Reverend or some other names. But normally he would say Madam or some such address. And I would watch him react with the late Dr. Mary Grant. And again, the respect that he showed to his seniors was really remarkable. And as our boss, if we met with, let's say, a UN agency or a group had come and we had been called together depending on the topic that was being discussed, he would wait for every one of us to comment on the particular subject matter. And once we were finished, all of us were finished with our contributions, he, as our boss, the president, will then sum up very briefly, top it up with his own comments, and then the meeting would end. I was a cabinet minister from 1993 to the early part of 2001,
wow,
when NDC handed over to President Kufuor. Yes. So really, I worked with him for about 8 years.
Wow. So you were one of the people who survived the 2 terms of the NDC as a democratic party.
Yes, please.
What was the emotion his ministers had towards him? I get two things when I talk to people. Some talk about fear, some talk about love. And some even go as far as talk about Machiavelli saying it is better to be feared than to be loved, and that Rawlings was more of the former. I mean, is that true? Was it, what kind of relationship did he have with his subordinates?
Like I said, I knew him as my boss. I worked... Sorry, I can't hear you, Ben.
No, just go ahead.
I worked with him as a cabinet minister. He was someone who was very much concerned about the environment and the education of the girl child. So in all the 3 or so, let's say 4 portfolios that I held during that time, he was very much concerned with all those areas. And the thing is, if you had a discussion with him or in cabinet, he would allow you to talk. He would allow you to express all your opinions and so on. He would ask questions now and again to clarify certain issues that you may not have made too clear. And at the end of it, if it was okay, he would say, okay, madam, go ahead. Or if he had some other things that he wanted you to look at, he would make those suggestions. I was not afraid of him. Let me put it this way. He did not engender fear in me. I didn't know him on a social level, so I cannot speak to some of the comments others may make or others may have made. I cannot comment on the social setting.
He divides opinion among Ghanaians. Whilst you worked with him, did you confront those contrasts of people who absolutely adored him and those who just couldn't stand him? How did you relate to those two groups?
Yes, indeed. Some of my many friends, because I came from the background of Matemehu, Asante girl. And so some of my friends, my family, extended family in particular, friends from school, university, and so on, who had gone through with all of us the various military regimes, would make certain comments, and I would have to explain what they would usually say. What are you, an Ashanti girl, a Matemehu girl from a Matemehu family? What are you doing with those socialist guys? So I would have to say, I am perhaps I will describe myself as how shall I put it? As someone who is a capitalist with a conscience. A capitalist with a conscience, although one or two of them will say, how can that be? There is no such thing as a capitalist with a conscience. And so we would debate back and forth. But yes, one had to confront those issues. I had very close, dear friends who had, in one way or another, suffered under some of the military times before Ghana came into the democratic dispensation. So with those relationships, times were not easy. That's all I can say for now.
Let's end on his work in Ghana. If you were to rate him in terms of our leaders from Gadgisberg through Nkrumah to Kufuor to what we have now with Anado, are you able to rank him? What is his contribution? Where do you place him?
In relation to all of these people, is that what you are saying?
Yes, all our leaders we've had since Ghana became a nation state.
Bernard, I think what I really take away from him is his concern for the ordinary person, the common downtrodden man. Many of our leaders talk the talk, but they don't really walk the walk. I was around during Nkrumah's time, so I can say something about that. I wasn't really in Ghana during Professor Buzia's time. I was away in graduate school, so I cannot say too much about that. But certainly, unless the Ghanaian character was just pretending, people I felt were far more honest, people showed a lot more integrity during Rawlings' time. The corruption that we saw during the latter part of General Achampong's time, because I came back home from graduate school towards the end of General Achampong's time. The Kalabule and all those things, and the corruption that we saw and we are still seeing now, certainly were not part of President Rawlings' time. Really, from where I saw things, I did not see what is happening now or what was happening during the earlier times. President Nkrumah, remember that the population was not as large as it is now. We went to boarding school, we went to university, and the kind of facilities that we had, whether as science students or arts students, as we called it then, were certainly much, much better than our children now and grandchildren now are enjoying. So when one is comparing these eras, one ought to look at the resources that were available to those who were running affairs and the resources that are available now, the numbers of people that those resources were supposed to cater for. One ought to balance some of these things, and so you can't just do a scorecard without looking at all of these.
Fair enough. Commiserations to you, and thank you for agreeing to share your knowledge about his life with us. We wish you well.
Thank you. Condolences to all of us, but especially to his nuclear family and even his extended family. And of course, those of us in the NDC who have really lost someone who kept us on our toes, I would say. Thank you very much, Bernard, for giving me the opportunity to talk about our late leader.
My pleasure. Doc, thank you. That was Dr. Christina Mwaku-Nyama, who is former Minister of many portfolios, former Minister for Environment, Science and Technology, former Minister for Education, former Minister for Lands and Forestry, also Presidential Advisor to President Mills and President Mahama, one of the stalwarts of the NDC. This is still the point of view. Coming up later, Fritz Bafo also talks to me. He's a communicator, former politician. We'll be speaking to him as well. But I wanted to just take you to the Holy Spirit Cathedral, because the 4-day activities of Rawlings's, if you like, final journey began with a requiem mass at the cathedral. And Archbishop Gabriel Charles Angela Palmer-Bako, who's the Metropolitan Archbishop of Cape Coast, gave what I consider to be a seminal homily on the life of Rawlings. I have a quick excerpt for you to enjoy.
My dear friends and family of Jerry, this is what the Lord laid on my heart as I reflected on the public life of Jerry John Rawlings and the service he rendered this nation and humanity as a whole. Jerry, in his own way, was always hungry and thirsting for righteousness. Jerry, in his own way, fought for the poor. He longed for the coming of the kingdom of heaven. He worked for justice to be established for the underprivileged, and he could not tolerate the slow pace at which this was coming to birth. Nor could he suffer those who seemingly deliberately thwarted the manifestation of the kingdom of God. Jerry's mantra, probity, accountability, and transparency, was what he tried to see instituted in the Ghanaian body politic. And I testify to the fact that he lived and he died for this. Many of us, though convinced about the need for transparency, probity, and accountability in human discourse and in political intercourse, we could not espouse and appreciate the path Jerry took to execute this program for good governance. Nevertheless, my deepest conviction is that only God will be the best judge of Jerry on the depth and the genuineness of his conviction and faith in God, a truth that only God knows best and can fathom about his son, Jerry John Rawlings. And so I repeat, blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Dearly beloved in Christ, I am again deeply convinced that finally and at last, Jerry has come to the full truth he so hungered for. Jerry has now come to understand that which was driving him on, and he has come to realize or even appreciate that he was hungry for the Lord, and how maybe unknowingly he was an instrument in the hand of an omniscient God, and how this all-powerful God was fulfilling history with Jerry as one of his divine instruments. Beloved, if there is any legacy that we can uphold of Jerry John Rawlings, let us first and foremost forgive him for what in our eyes and estimation seemingly excesses in his utterances and in his doings.
So that was the Metropolitan Archbishop of Cape Coast, His Grace Charles Pomabakel. We played just an excerpt of that homily. Really, really fascinating. If you want the details, you can go to citynewsroom.com for more. When we come back, there's Dr. Saneto Rawlings as well. There was a video held on Sunday evening for Chairman Rawlings. You hear an excerpt. Then I'll be talking to Fritz Bafo, who's, I can call him, he was a communication consultant working with Rawlings, because whether it was in his Sincerely Yours interviews or his interview with the Liberian Prince Johnson or some of these things he did, he was quite close to the man. He'll be joining us to talk about his memories of Rawlings. This is the point of view. Stay with us.
It's a good day to meet every challenge. It's a good day to want more out of life. It's a good day to wish for it, work for it, go get it. Familiar taste, a delicious indulgent with a flavor you just can't hide. Refreshing energy, gives so much for so little. For a strong performance, you've come to the right place. Good Day Energy Drink. Why wait a minute to enjoy a good day when every second counts? Good Day Energy Drink keeps you going.
Excessive drinking can be detrimental to your health. Not recommended for persons under 18 years.
By law, in Ghana, classes of vehicles have maximum speed limits which drivers should observe. The maximum speed loaded heavy goods vehicles should travel is 75 km per hour. In the case of buses, passenger carrying vehicles, or unloaded heavy goods vehicles, the maximum speed should be 80 km per hour. Saloon cars and light vehicles are not supposed to travel more than 100 km per hour. Agricultural vehicles should not travel more than 30 km per hour. In all cases, drivers should drive at a lower speed if the environmental conditions require the vehicle to be driven at a lower speed. Stop road crashes now. Stay alive.
This road safety education is brought to you by the National Road Safety Authority.
Welcome back. This is still The Point of View, a special edition for Rawlings, former president of Ghana. He died on November the 12th. So far, we've heard from Dr. Christina Makunyama, who is a former minister of many portfolios. We've also heard a bit of the Archbishop Palmer Bakel, who preached a very impressive homily at the Requiem Mass. Now, before we bring you our interview with Fritz Bafo, on Sunday night, there was a vigil held for former President Rawlings. Now, Dr. Zanetta Rawlings is the eldest child of President Rawlings. She's also the member of parliament for Klote constituency. And she spoke about her father in a way she hasn't done in a while. And this was one of the few times we heard her talking and reading some sort of tribute. So I'm going to give you some excerpts of that.
It was quite complicated sometimes. We didn't live in the castle with him. I think that was a joint decision between my parents for two reasons. One of which was the fact that he knew that at the time, because there wasn't that much stability, there was a threat to his life at some times, and he didn't want us to be a part of that. So he felt that if we lived in a separate location, it kind of decreased the risk. The second reason, which I think was definitely a joint parent, where my mother probably weighed in a lot more, was to make sure that we didn't grow up with the airs and a feeling of superiority, but because by virtue of living within that, in the castle, for example, so it was just to have as normal a life as possible, which meant we didn't see him as often. But when we did, there was always something. He wanted to impart so much knowledge, and if it wasn't teaching my siblings and I how to drive before our feet could even touch the gas pedal, it was teaching us how to fly the monoplanes or ride our bicycles. He was purpose-driven, and every encounter with him needed to have some kind of meaning and an outcome of sorts. He helped us develop a real love for nature. He really loved animals and nature, and he was really in his element when he was out in nature. That was interesting. My mother was the stricter disciplinarian. However, when she kind of ran out of options on what to do, she'd say, she'd tell our father, and then, you kind of back down, because you don't even want the glare. He had this glare. And we all got that kind of treatment. Or if there was something that you wanted and my mother didn't want to be the one to say no, she would tell you, go and ask your father. And then that means that the answer is no, but she didn't say no. But by and large, he was, when he was with you, he was present. And we didn't get to spend that time, the amount of time with him as an everyday. But when you did spend time with him, it was fruitful, And it wasn't a case of looking at your age or your size or your gender before he taught you something. He just taught you everything. Sometimes he'd be riding a horse and he'd pick Amina and let her, she was 5 years or something old at the time, teaching her how to ride, or riding a motorbike and all of that. He was a combination of love and everything, just the combination. The man who we all got to know, that was a lot of what we experienced as well. And yet, in some funny way, when he wore the hat of head of state in public, we knew not to cross that line. And I remember when we were going to school, whenever there was a new fleet of vehicles that came to the presidency, he made sure that the worst vehicles that were almost unserviceable were the ones that came to the house. And I can't count the number of times when the car that came to pick us from school had to be pushed, to start and all of that. And there was one time, I think, Kenobai was the chief of staff at the time, and he kindly offered to bring a relatively nice vehicle to the residence. And my father came around that day and saw it, and he did this walk around the vehicle, looking at the car, and no comment, and you thought, oh, no. And by the end of that day, the vehicle had been changed. Yeah, so that was the kind of person he was. Or he just did not, he wasn't someone who was an accumulator of material wealth. And I think when Ya and I were quite young, Ya comes right after us. And the gate was quite noisy. So as he would drive in through the gate, Ya and I could hear the gate, and we would run into our rooms and try and hide our shoes behind the wardrobe, because every time he'd come into the room and open the wardrobe and stand there for a few seconds. You have too many shoes. Why do you need so many shoes? When he was young, he didn't need this many shoes. So why do we have so many shoes? So it was this lecture that you kept getting, and you thought, no. So as soon as he's coming into the room, we'd run ahead of him and try and hide our shoes, because we just couldn't handle the lecture over and over and again. I still don't have that many shoes, thanks to him and all of that trauma. But it just...
So those were rare insights into Rawlings, the man, the father, from Dr. Zaneto Agyemang Rawlings. And this was a conversation held at the vigil. Now, finally, I'm going to take you to Fritz Baffour. So, Ambassador Fritz Baffour is a former minister under the Mills government. He was also a former member of parliament for Ablekuma South. And he had a very interesting relationship with Rawlings. I met him up at the Ghana Club, not too far from here, a few hours ago to chat with him about Rawlings. Here are his views on the man. The Ghana Club, which is really an interesting historical place in between Dutch and British Accra. And I'm here with the great Fritz Baffour. What do we call him? Former politician, former journalist?
I'm still a journalist.
No, nobody becomes a former journalist. Great to see you, Uncle Chris.
Thank you.
It's good. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm very well.
Where are we sitting? Where is this?
Well, we're sitting on the beach, and this is the Ghana Club, one of Ghana's oldest gentlemen's club. Now it's a club that is gender sensitive, so we have women too. But it's an old club where actually it wasn't a gentleman's club, because we had a lady president in the 50s.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was a place of gathering for the senior Ghanaian civil servants and businessmen.
Very interesting. Today is the second of the 4-day celebration of the life of Rawlings. On Sunday, there was a requiem mass at the Holy Spirit Cathedral. Today, the public is filing past. So even though we've spoken to you about Rawlings' life, we just wanted your reflections now that he's begun his final phase of the journey. What's your opening comment on the way Ghanaians have poured to the conference center? People are tuning in and watching. Lots of people are sending tributes. What's your reflection on that?
It's to be expected, because he's been very much part and parcel of our life since 1979. He's been an iconic figure, a very powerful human being in a scheme of things. So it's to be expected that Ghanaians, some of them, the only person they've known is Jerry Rawlings. So this is a time for them to come to the reality that he's no more. But what we pray for is that his ideas and some of the great things that he did will remain in our memory and we'll act upon it.
Looking at the type of life he lived, is it surprising the way he's sort of exited? It's very peaceful in a way. he had buried his mom. Things had sort of normalized. He had become friends with a lot of people who used to be his adversaries. It's almost some sort of evolution. I don't know where reflection is. How he went in a quite serene, quiet way, thinking about the tumultuous 70s and the crazy 80s.
He was very much a person who loved his country. And so when you love your country, sometimes you've got to change the way you look at things. It's an evolution of the mind. You know, Jerry Rawlings was a very introspective person, hardworking and very curious about life. And he was almost a mystic in the way he thought of things. The way he wanted to fly, his attitude to flying, his attitude to governance, his attitude to his friends and everything. There was always a mystical element, And so he went the way that I think if he had the choice, he would have gone. He came in like a meteorite and he's extinguished, he's gone out into the horizon,
So he comes in very bright.
Yeah.
That's what he has to do.
Yeah.
But there was a certain restlessness about him. In fact, yesterday, when Archbishop Bako was preaching, he says Rawlings was hungry for righteousness. Explain that to us, for those who were close to him. Was this restlessness real?
Yes, he was a very restless person. He was always on the move. He always had something he wanted to do. I think sleep bothered him.
Sleep is for the weak.
In the week, not necessarily for the weak, but for other people. Because there were times that he'd actually call me in the evening because he couldn't sleep, and would sit and talk till the morning light.
Wow.
All right, on several occasions. And he was very restless, very curious. He had a hyperactive mind, and when you sat with him, you were always on edge, because he would tax you, with either questions or with what he thought were your impressions.
What's your own relationship with him, and how has it evolved? For a lot of people may not have known that you were closely associated with him at some point.
Well, it was difficult at the beginning, because he took to me and I took to him, and we had common interests in terms of international relations, perspectives on Ghana. I believe very much in the culture and history of Ghana. He was very curious about that. He wanted us to up domestic tourism and get people to know about their country, because he'd been to every nook and cranny of the country. And so therefore, he wanted the same experience, because he thought that Ghanaians would be elevated when they found out what they had within the confines of what they call the Republic of Ghana. So for that, we had that communality. And then, my sense of humor, and he also had a great sense of humor. So he loved a lot of my jokes and would sit down and crack jokes and everything. But there was always at the back of his mind a very serious mien, in anything that he wanted to do. Very, very serious. Because after a joke, he would come back and say, by the way, you understand. And so it evolved into a very good relationship. There were times that we drifted apart, basically for political reasons, and sometimes I disagreed with some of his utterances, especially to do with Atta Mills and at the time, because I thought that, it wasn't much, it was very, very much like him, because when he introduced me to Atta Mills, he said he was one of the greatest men he'd met. So it was a bit of and so there was a bit of a problem. But when we got back together, it was as if nothing had ever happened. So it's like when you have an elder brother and you have a set to with him, then later on you reconcile, and it's a great thing. So it wasn't anything that was irredeemable. So the fact that it was redeemed means, we're...
So it means whilst he was president, he supported Sincerely Yours, which was the program that opened up the country to us.
Yes, he didn't support it in terms of financial, but he gave... There were times when I did things that needed his backing for it to be shown. For instance, I went to Liberia to cover the Ghanaian troops there. I interviewed Prince Johnson on the death of Samuel Kayando. We talked about General Kwenu, who had been given a bad name at the time, and it was rectified by Prince Johnson's interview. But the people in the armed forces who believe that that shouldn't have been shown. But I was glad that Rawlings stepped in and had it shown, and actually put somebody in the studio to prevent the footage from being taken away from me. And then he was instrumental in getting me into Rwanda to cover the wonderful work of the Ghanaian troops in Rwanda. If you don't know, but the thing is that the Ghanaian force, the Gambat in UNAMIR, saved over 2 million lives in Rwanda. Nobody talked about it, but Ghanaian soldiers are heroes when it comes to peacekeeping. And I had the opportunity of going there during the fighting. You know, so
you spoke to General Anyidoho?
Very much so. I became a very good friend, and he wrote about my team in his book, The Guns of Kigali. And those opportunities were given to me. And then when he traveled abroad, I joined his entourage. We paid for it ourselves, but it was like Sincerely Yours, following Rawlings around and asking Ghanaians about what they felt outside and both inside Ghana. So, you know, there was one time I went all the way to the Upper East, and I was in the Bulsa district, the various Bulsa districts. And I interviewed ex-servicemen, because the highest concentration of warrant officers and sergeants was in the Bulsa area.
So they are talking Sandema,
yes, Fumbisi, and all those places.
Wow.
And Urugu, and you know. And when I interviewed one retired WO, and he talked about the military academy and everything. And I was very surprised when I got a call. And at that time we didn't have, you didn't use our mobile sets like that. But I got a call on my landline. I was him, and he said, "Thank you very much for sharing your experiences with this wonderful man." And he said he knew him. Okay, so I realized that I had some kind of support for what I was doing. All right, and I tried to make it as apolitical as possible, because you see, the cultural ethos of Ghana is not about politics. It's about consensus. It's about getting together. It's about creating a nation. Our founding fathers were people who had an understanding of nationhood, and they worked towards it. And you can see that the template is what has been used, and he came in and improved upon it.
Wow.
I heard someone say today that Nkrumah founded Ghana and Rawlings developed it. To a certain extent, that is very true. And the person who said that, I think it was Sampi Yali. So I would like to acknowledge that that's what he said.
Himself.
Yes, Akeda himself. And so, very important statement. And to a certain extent, it is true, because the exposure he had of going all throughout Ghana and seeing poverty and seeing a dearth of facilities for certain people, his belief was all inclusiveness for Ghanaians. That Ghanaians should share into any bounty that anybody had in the city. All right, and he cared for those who were the unfortunate ones in our midst, the ones who had been discriminated against, the ones who had been neglected or rejected. And I also respect him for the great work he's done in terms of women empowerment in this country. Along with Nana Akufo-Addo, you can't take it out of it. Very, very important.
How critical was Nana Akufo-Addo? We, as young people, just read about her. I mean, I don't want you to go into all the details, but in terms of first ladies, how influential and important was she in that conversation?
Well, the relationship between Jerry John Rawlings and Akufo-Addo was something special. They loved each other, all right, and they complemented each other, all right. And Jerry deferred to her a lot, because she's a very knowledgeable woman, all right? I mean, she's an intellectual, very well read, very well spoken, and very opinionated, all right? Sometimes, I mean, that can grate on the nerves, but she's a wonderful woman in terms of the work that she did for Ghana. And I covered her. I did a film on the 31st December Women's Movement. And when I went around, I found out the impact that she'd had on the development of women in governance and in civil life was immense. All right, and they complemented each other. All right, and so it was a good team.
So the Rawlings work was amplified because of the partnership in Nana Akufo-Addo.
Yes, and Nana Akufo-Addo had very strong views about womanhood and the role of women in our society. I mean, we should never underestimate it. It is a very powerful form, but to bring it to light, for us to be aware that without our women folk, all right, we are nothing. All right, and she proved it, and I think she set the tone. Because after that, Mrs. Kufuor also came in and started a Motherhood Foundation. And then Mrs. Mills also came up with something that you had to do something to complement your husband.
And she set that in motion.
Set that in motion, yes.
Interesting. You are Catholic, and Rawlings, was he a practicing Catholic or just a cultural one? Because yesterday the mass was quite elaborate, and clearly Archbishop says once a Catholic, always a Catholic.
Yeah, he was a Catholic. If he had the opportunity, he would have gone to church regularly. He didn't have it.
Okay.
So therefore, it was something that but in terms of his thinking and his religious, outlook, he was very much a Catholic.
Okay.
All right. And at a certain time when I was talking to him, he revealed to me that if he'd had the opportunity and he hadn't become a pilot, he would have become a priest. All right. And
he said that to you?
Yes. And he said that not only to me, but he said that several times to other people. And that Catholic outlook was there, the caring outlook. The fact that, you had to do something about the man who was unfortunate. You understand? Christ came to save the unfortunate ones, and that is very much a Catholic mantra, all right, that you have to do your best. And so you have Reverend Father Campbell doing wonders for lepers. You find the wonderful work that was being done in the northern part of Ghana. I remember the Hunger Awards, which Rawlings won. He shared it with a Reverend Father from Benin Republic. So it shows you that Catholic ethos was there, very much so, yes.
He's very much loved in the north.
Yes.
And I recall again many years on television he would wear a fugu. What was it about the north? Was it always like that, or it was part of his evolution? Because there was a period in his life where he spent a lot of time there and he would dress in a fugu and he would essentially, he did UDS as well.
Yes. The historical nature of the economics of Ghana was that when the great, we call it Guggisberg, whom everybody loves as one of the greatest and most adventurous governors, started doing the development of Ghana with Achimota, the harbor and everything, he actually stated that it was best to leave the north underdeveloped because there was nothing there. So that they would use the human resource base in the north, all right, for where where the wealth was.
Wow.
At that time it was Takwa, Dugwa, the cocoa, the gold, Ubwasi,
it was a deliberate
policy, yes.
Policy to underdevelop, leave them
right.
There. Wow.
And so when Kwame Nkrumah came in, the first thing he wanted to do was to make sure that the north caught up in terms of the development of infrastructure. And Rawlings accentuated it, all right? And in doing so, and Rawlings is the sort of person who always wants to find out exactly what is happening. So he went there for a first-hand experience. And as a soldier, he stayed in the tent, he stayed with them, he drank their water, and then he realized the situation with guinea worm. So he worked hand in hand with President Carter, the former President Jimmy Carter, and the Sasakawa Foundation. And that was when he realized that we had to do a lot for the north. We had to, the electrification programs, the roads, the fertilizer, the empowerment of our women by getting them share nut processing, food processing, because in the north, 75% of the food that is processed is done by women. So, it fell in with the way he wanted Ghana to be. And that to him was a lab, a test tube case for him. And that is why. And they also, reacted to him positively. And I found the northern part of Ghana, though, because I have your antecedents there, but I found the northern part of Ghana very, very attractive. I still find it very, very attractive. And if the economics allowed it, I'm sure that I'll be living there.
What do you say to people who hate his guts?
Giants of his kind also have enemies. And one can understand, because he was very forthright and he had very strong views. And sometimes he shot off the cuff. And so therefore, if you were not ready for that, or you had other impressions of yourself, he would actually graze on you in a way. So I think that, though it's to be understood, I think in a way he was also misunderstood by people who did not know the person they were dealing with.
If we put everything together, where would history place him?
I think that history would place him as a very energetic person who changed the direction. I have always thought of that the trajectory was going wrong, and he was the one who corrected the trajectory. All right. Right now, people are saying that the circumstances in which he came in are back. But the thing is that people now know how to resolve that without going to pick up a gun and shoot people. We're going to the courts. We're dealing with Parliament. We're dealing in terms of parley. All right. And Ghanaians now have got to realize, and I keep on saying this, that it's not anymore about entitlement, but it's about responsibility. And that responsibility, you have got to realize the responsibility to yourself and to your nation. And I think he embodied that.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing part of your vast knowledge of Rawlings with us. Commiserations.
Thank you. I'm going to miss him. I'm still in denial. I saw him a little bit today. I'll be going around to pay my respects to him tomorrow. It's a sad time.
It's painful.
But Ghana must survive, and Ghana must progress, and Ghana must go on. And thanks to Jerry Rawlings for his contribution to our wonderful and great country.
And thanks to you for watching. Quick comments coming in from some viewers. Nana Kwame Opasko says, rest well, Papa J. You have paid your dues. Ghanaians remember your good work. Greetings to Daniel Kwesi Ening, incoming MC for Adorejiri. And then Miftao from Tamale Central says, a sobering week. May the soul of our cherished founder, Jerry John Rawlings, rest in peace. A revolutionary is gone, but the revolution lives on. The ideals of probity, accountability, and transparency will not be lost. Thank you for watching. We had Dr. Christiana Makuniama earlier, Fritz Barford later. We also played you excerpts of Zaneto Rawlings and Archbishop Palmer Buckle. Stay with CCTV. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.